Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 96 of SAMA, a program which invites an expert to talk about their area of expertise. This week we are delighted to have Richard Gordon as our guest expert. This is the second time Richard has been on our show. He was the guest expert on episode 72 of SAMA, where he taught us about unexplored human abilities. Today he has returned to discuss energy healing, the power to heal. Richard is the founder of Quantum Touch organization. He is a visionary and pioneer. With 40 years of experience in the field of energy medicine, Richard is the best-selling author of Quantum Touch, The Power to Heal, Quantum Touch 2, The New Human, Your Healing Hands, The Polarity Experience, and The Secret Nature of Matter. Richard has traveled around the globe to speak at medical centers, conferences, and chiropractic colleges. At each venue, he trains hundreds of participants so they too can perform hands-on healing and understand the principles of quantum touch. So welcome back to our show, Richard. It's fantastic to have you back.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is great.
Now, you must be wondering, why were we so keen to have you back? Well,
yeah, why were you so keen to have me back? I've been wondering this.
Well, I've got to tell you, the time when we had you before, it really astounded us. The things that you were saying, it surprised us. We wanted to learn more. So we bought one of your books, and then we bought another, and then another. So we've got 3 of your books, and then we now realise that we haven't bought your 4th book, the number 2 of Quantum Touch. Yes. But we got your books, we learned more about the theories, and we recommend, well, it's now our turn to do a bit of a shameless plug for your books. I recommend people do get them because it opens your eyes to our own potentials. It increases your potential to the point where you can actually heal your loved ones. Now, we purchased your book, and we're reading your book, and then something very, very interesting happened.
Oh, actually, that's not the case. I know he's always a lousy storyteller. We didn't get your book, but after
we ordered it.
Yeah, that's right. We didn't get your book.
I just drink.
But we went to New Zealand, and we were on a boat trip. And that day, the waves were really strong. So I was thrown to the ground and hit the seat very badly. And I couldn't move at all. So I was lying down on the ground.
Very intense pain.
Yeah, really bad. And I felt that I was passing out. So I lied down on the ground, and Jay came to me. He had nothing to help me, but suddenly he realized that he interviewed you, and he learned a little bit about quantum touch healing. So he used the very little knowledge of quantum touch healing and do the healing for me. After about maybe 3 minutes, I could stand up without any problem, without any pain, and there was no bruise at all.
No bruise, and this was a really mighty whack. It damaged part of the boat, but
yeah, it was really bad. I couldn't move. I really felt that's one of the worst incidents I had. So
well, that will wake you up into being curious.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know how sometimes, Richard, life's events seem to push you in a certain direction. Well, we were more than just a little bit gently nudged. We're thrown in this direction of...
Oh, yeah. You know, this is a very common story, that somebody has this life-changing experience they cannot deny. And then from that, it propels them to a different direction of growth. And this is actually not an accident. This is what I call dark miracles, because it's the most common story you've ever heard. If I hadn't had this tragedy, I never would have become the person I am today. But I have developed another system I don't think I'd mentioned to you. It's called self-created health. And what it does is it helps people to discover the emotional causes of the condition that they're dealing with. And it's very easy to find it, but we don't paint by numbers. We don't say, well, shoulder means this and ear means that. We don't do that. We use very simple interrogative questions where a person reveals everything about the condition from a very subjective point of view. And then when you turn the questions around, it becomes completely clear what the emotional issue was. And then you realize that weird spider bite that caused this incredible inflammation and pain and was a perfect mirror of emotions you didn't want to feel. It was not an accident that that spider bit you there. It was part of this spectacular, unfathomable synchronicity of reality. Then, when people release those emotions, only then are they ready to start taking responsibility. That, yeah, they did it to me, but I've been carrying that around ever since. I've been doing it to myself and to people that I love. Only when they get to that level of self-awareness and self-honesty and even self-love are they able to then forgive themselves. But there's no self-forgiveness until you know what and why, and you've actually released the emotions. Because you can say, oh, I forgive, and you can use your mantras and say, I forgive, but if you haven't released the rage, the pain, the anger, the hurt, the shame, whatever vibration is deep inside that's underlining that, then the flame has not been, the pot that's boiling hasn't been taken off the flame. You've got to do those process work. And then when the self-forgiveness hits, which is toward the last step, it turns into an overwhelming self-love that is not containable. And the body has the ability to be sick, not as a dysfunction, but a communication. So one of the communications is, oh, you want to learn about energy healing. So let's have this crazy pain, accident, or experience. And then somebody comes along, does their little magic, the quantum touch, I like to call it. And then you see the miracle. Right. But the healer is the one who is sick and got well. That's what we like to say, that the definition of a healer is someone who is sick and got well. And a great healer is someone very sick who got well quickly, because it is your own body that heals itself. No one can do the healing for you. They can hold the energy for your body to utilize that energy for its own self-healing, but no one can actually heal your own cells. Your cells are a self-healing mechanism. So that's an overview.
We want to share something with you, Richard. We haven't told you, or many people, only a few select friends, of something that very, very surprising happened during our first interview. You did not pick it up. I did not pick it up.
Yeah.
When we had ordered the books and you were reviewing that interview to learn more.
After that accident, I came back to China and I got all of your books and I started to watch that video, and I shocked myself when I noticed that.
Now, I'm going to share my screen, Richard. I want you to look at listen very carefully to the very end of that tape when we're discussing how love does not change over distance. Your loved one could be 1,000,000 miles away. It makes no difference. It doesn't reduce the love. But you listen to the very end of that video. So here we go. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I see the screen.
Okay.
How is it necessary to be with the person to direct energy towards them, healing energy?
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
If you love somebody and they're 5,000 miles away, can you still love them?
Yes.
You love them any less?
No,
not at all.
Now, did you hear Echo repeating also no at the end?
Yeah, I did.
Now, did you hear that during the interview?
I don't remember.
No, I didn't. I would definitely have heard that. Now, you may know that in the first interview, I asked a copy of your video and you sent it from your computer. I heard that audio on my computer, original video recording,
Yeah.
also on your local copy. So we have got echo repeating, no, no.
And I was not in that room.
Well, you say this part of the story.
Yeah, Richard, I think you are the person who knows that only Jay was in that room that day. And I was showing my parents around in Beijing. So you asked the question whether love will be affected over distance.
Yeah.
And so
this video actually proved it.
Proves it, because Echo's voice, her spirit, is saying over all of us, no, no. That is undeniably Echo's, her voice.
Yeah, I always hate to hear myself on the video, so I never listen to my own video. But when I was listening to your video and heard my voice, I was shocked.
So it's not very often that you get proof positive. I'll just play it one more time for people.
How is it necessary to be with the person to direct energy towards them, healing energy?
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
If you love somebody and they're 5,000 miles away, can you still love them?
Yes, yes, yes.
You love them any less?
No,
not at all.
How
and so that's
is
it.
it necessary?
So, oops, stop share. So now we have on a video recording absolute proof that the soul, the spirit, is everywhere. And so I cannot get away with anything without Echo knowing what I'm doing. We were discussing her, and we were saying, the love does not change. And she was agreeing with us. And she was, 20 kilometers away, 15 kilometers away? Or miles?
At least.
Nice. Well, there you go. The world is more mysterious than we know, or we can know.
Oh, the world is absolutely more mysterious than we can possibly ever come to comprehend
or imagine.
So we, as you could imagine, after discovering this, got even more interested in the work that you're doing and what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Decided to jump feet first. So we've got a few questions for you. Now, when Echo first hurt herself on the boat, I didn't do things in accordance to your normal method, because we hadn't received your books yet, and so I had the basic idea of energy flowing through my arms down to the fingertips to her, but I wasn't imagining the energy flowing from my feet. I was imagining the energy flowing from above.
It all works. There's ways of amplifying it. There's ways of making it stronger. But when your heart is into it and your desire is into it, all techniques work. Really? They all work. You see, everybody wants to be special and say, oh, I've got the one. I've got the piece of magic that's special. But the bottom line is, I have heard this story so many times. Another story I've heard a lot of times. And the story is somebody was really hurt. Somebody was in a bad situation. Somebody else wanted to help, but they don't know how to do it.
Yes.
And they're inspired, which is part of the whole process.
Yes.
And they feel their love and their inspiration, and they just want to do something. So they make up some technique, and then it works. And then maybe next time it didn't work because they weren't so inspired.
I understand.
Now, if you know how to do the breathing and body awareness exercises, you don't have to be that inspired to actually be able to cause these miraculous healing events.
Okay.
But when you happen to be in that space, you say, okay, I'll imagine the energy coming in and doing this. Yeah, it'll work. It all works, because the healing is a function of resonance and entrainment. That means when two things are vibrating at different frequencies, there is a tendency for them to match up. So either the low frequency will match the high one, the high matches the low one, or they meet in the middle. A lot of people who are psychotherapists or dentists or massage people get drained on a regular basis. The suicide rate among dentists is terrible because they don't know how to protect themselves energetically. because nobody wants to see them, and they put everybody in pain. It's like they scare everybody. So they're picking up this energy from other people. And the massage people tend to feel drained, and a lot of body workers and psychotherapists listening to the people's problems all day, they're all getting drained because they don't know how to lift their vibration to a higher resonance and then become the dominant resonance. So in quantum touch, we use breathing and body awareness to raise our vibration higher and higher and higher, as you well know now.
Yes.
But you lift your energy, and then the other person in your field, their energy starts coming up, and their body does its own self-healing. And you keep lifting yourself throughout the session, and they keep coming up, and then the miracles happen.
Okay. So how important is it to actually draw energy from your surroundings or from the earth?
Well,
from your feet?
It's a process of self-grounding. If you bring the energy up from your feet to the top of your head, and there's ways of doing it in waves, and there's different kinds of breathing techniques that you can use to amplify it. But we find it to be an extremely effective technique, but it's not the only technique. It's like quantum touch actually works with all modalities. It doesn't say we're the only one, or we're the best, we're special. No, it's basic human knowledge that we're working with. And so people use it with acupressure, acupuncture, they use it with qigong or any other modality, because it's an adding system, not a subtracting system.
Right. There must be some people that go through the motions, go through the breathing and the touch points, but they still can't actually feel the energy flow.
That's true.
Would that still work?
It's irrelevant.
Okay.
Because they're still doing it. I remember one fellow used to come to my lectures all the time, and he'd help out. When I used to give lectures, I'd have 2 or 3, 5 people in the back of the room giving 3 minutes or 5 minutes to every single person in the audience, because talk is cheap. Anybody can make up stories and tell wonderful tales, but it's only through their own experiences that I would get between like 30 and 110% coming back to the workshop. So maybe I'd have 50 people coming to the lecture, and I'd get 60 people at the workshop, because they'd bring their friends, because they'd have experiences directly. And one guy coming back to this lecture over and over again, he said, I can't feel the energy at all.
Right.
But over time, his body woke up to the physical sensations. Another friend of mine was from New York. He said, I don't feel anything. And then, he kept practicing. Then all of a sudden, one day he goes, okay, I feel it now. And it's like your body develops the kinesthetic awareness over time, and it's irrelevant because, well, they can still love, even if they can't feel their. Okay, so I do this exercise. Everybody at home or watching this can do this too. And can you feel your finger without touching it? Can you feel the skin? Can you feel the blood pulsing through the finger? Does your finger begin to vibrate, to pulse, to tingle? Do you feel heat or cool? Can you increase the sensation by bringing more of your awareness and your breath into your finger? And that's it. That is the kinesthetic awareness that we use in quantum touch, except we do that through the whole body.
Right.
And then over time, you get to be better and better at it. You can bring it through the organs, glands, and systems of your body. You can feel it everywhere. And then you can bring that feeling and project it. And that's part of the distant healing work.
Right. You had a question about blockages, didn't you?
Yeah. In Chinese traditional medicine, blockages can cause illnesses.
Yes.
So if my body is blocked, can I still heal others?
Of course. Because you're not blocked the same way they are. And so I remember one woman in class, she was a great grandma, she was very old, and she was working on this young man who was training for the Olympics. Well, her energy, so to speak, is sort of low because she's kind of getting to the end of her time, and he's just coming into his prime. And So he had a sprained ankle, and she's working on the ankle, and of course it just heals. Because even though he's holding a very high vibration energetically all the time, he's not doing it in the ankle. And that we're all holding various vibrations of love. Now, love is a non-physical force in the universe. It doesn't exist it exists outside of time. Because you could love somebody in the past, you can love somebody across time, and it doesn't exist in a specific time. And it can't be measured with modern equipment. It's not electromagnetic, as some people like to say. Oh, either your aura is an electromagnetic field. That's horseshit. It's not what's true. What's true is that the love is our connection to our spirituality, and we're eternal consciousness beings that go on forever. And that love is not measurable, and therefore the scientists don't want to believe that it actually exists as a force. And that life force energy, which is the prana, the chi, the ki, whatever word we're using I call it life force, that fundamental energy is what's doing the healing. So each of us have a bouquet of vibrations of love that we put out that are unique to us. Each person loves differently than another. But one person may be very nurturing, one may be very protective, and so forth. We all have our own ways of doing it, but we all lack the ways that other people are doing it, and then we're not doing so much. And so when great grandma gives energy to the kid's ankle, the body receives it. It's like, oh, water when you're thirsty. It's fantastic stuff.
Right. But would the flow from her still be natural if her energy is blocked? Would it still flow to?
Well, you see, blocked is a relative term. She's very blocked in many ways.
Yes.
But the ways of giving love isn't blocked.
So you're not talking about a physical or energy block?
No. Two people who are sick can give each other sessions and get better because they're raising their vibration in the process and they're giving that stimulation to each other. We don't see this as a problem. This is not a concern.
Right.
But what if, sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
What if two people have the same diseases?
We haven't seen that as a problem.
Okay.
I mean, here's my desire is that we get tens of millions of dollars for research because there's hundreds of questions like this that need to be answered. We're putting out a book soon. I think it's going to be like $2 on Amazon. We're not going to really try to make money on it. We just want to get it the wide distribution. And it's maybe 500 or 1,000 stories that people have told us. Like, you could write up your story and we'll add it to the book because we're going to keep adding to the book. And I wish you would write the story up and send it to our office at Quantum Touch. And then we'll put it in the book because we just keep everybody's story. We keep adding to it. We have them all organized so people can do a search and say, well, how does it work on Parkinson's? How does it work on arthritis? How does it work on this and that? And we can't advertise specific conditions, but we can share anecdotes.
Right.
And we have hundreds and hundreds of beautiful, extraordinary anecdotes that some of them are so insanely magical as to defy imagination.
Right. Wow. Now, you mentioned earlier about going to a dentist and the dentist becoming sick, or a masseur becoming sick because the negative energies on the people that they're working with. Can it be dangerous for people that are applying quantum touch over a long period of time?
No, because the system is built. Now, you're in China, and
France now.
France, but you've been in China.
Yeah.
And Qigong and acupuncture, but Qigong particularly, the Qigong masters will build their energy up very, very high, and then they give their energy to somebody, and then they have to reload again.
Yes.
Not the way it works with quantum touch. I had a I was doing demonstrations one time, and I'd given a big lecture, and I was going to work on every single person who had come to the lecture. I didn't have any helpers. So I was there for like 2 or 3 hours doing sessions, one after another, just constantly. And this man would come by every half an hour and look at me and go, and then he'd walk away and come back another half an hour later. As the line was getting smaller, finally when we had about 3 people left in line, he said, "You look tired before your talk." I said, "Yeah." He said, "You look energized now." I said, "Yeah, I'm actually getting stronger as I'm doing the work, because I'm constantly lifting my vibration the whole time I'm working. I'm not draining myself. I'm actually gaining energy the whole time I do this. I'm getting stronger as I'm working." And then I touched this woman and she just jumped because the energy got... You see, if you're going to see a quantum touch practitioner or any energy practitioner, there's a question you should ask before you set the appointment. And the question is, how do you feel after a long day of work? And if they say, "I sacrificed myself to help others and I'm very tired," go somewhere else. Don't make the appointment. But if they say, "Oh, I have so much energy, it's hard to go to sleep sometimes," make your appointment the last on the day, because their energy is going to get stronger and stronger throughout the day. So in quantum touch, because we're doing the breathing and body awareness, we're raising our vibration the whole time we're working. So you get stronger by the end of the session than you were at the beginning. You do not ever get drained. And so doing some basic quantum touch breathing and body awareness would protect the dentist, the massage practitioner, the psychotherapist, or other people working at the Department of Motor Vehicles or other places where everybody feels drained and depleted. You lift your energy all the time and you are not drained or depleted.
Can I?
Sure.
You just mentioned the Qigong masters in
Yes.
China. When Jay asked this question, he asked, will it be dangerous for the person who applies the healing for others long term? Actually, there's another story. There's another version of story for the Qigong masters.
Okay.
They draw up the energy and
yes, and they store it
for other people who have diseases, and those people get well. So when they get old, when these Qigong masters get old, they get weak and they get a lot of diseases. And also people who he helped before their diseases got back and got even worse.
What's the reason behind that?
There's a belief system in the Buddhism believes that 85%, only 15% of the diseases were actually caused by the pollution in the air or the pollution from the food, but the other 85% of diseases, the root cause is from the spirits that people have hurt in the past. Those spirits caused the diseases. And when the Qigong masters draw energy, they got really strong. The energy was really high, and the spirits were frightened and got left the bodies of those people. But there will be one day that the Qigong masters got weak. That's the point that the spirits can come back and do the revenge. And not only to the Qigong master, but also to those people who...
All right, let's look at this for a minute. This is really interesting stuff, and it's really worth commenting on. I would not call them spirits. I would reframe that. I would say that because we are spiritual beings, our love goes all the way to infinity. But because we love so deeply, the pain we feel is much deeper than anybody wants to know or experience. And so the wounding is so much deeper than we're willing to know. And then when we have these traumatic experiences emotionally, it's like the circuits get fried on a computer or a electrical device. That's called trauma, where you can't handle that much pain. So you go numb, you go unconscious. And then we continually act out the trauma, which is why young people find partners that are like their parents. Why we keep repeating our patterns over and over again. Because our higher self is intervening, wanting us to be healed. So we keep recreating the traumas over and over again. Energy healing is self-limited. It is not the final answer. And maybe they're right. 15% of the time, that will be all that they need. You fell down, you hurt yourself, you get the healing, you're fine. And maybe part of it was, I wanted to know the stuff was real. And that was worth it to have that experience to wake up. But there's a deeper level. And I teach a class once a year, and I'm going to do it this next weekend. And I call it self-created health, to teach people how to find those emotional causes, how to process and release those emotions, not only so symptoms go away, but they never come back, and people feel incredibly grateful for having had the condition. And it's not an evil spirit attacking me, it's the wounding. Hurt people hurt people. People who are wounded hurt each other all the time. And the more wounded they are, the more damage they're doing to other people. And then those wounded people hurt other people. It's the cycle of child abuse. And the untold story of the world, the untold history of the world, is thousands of generations of child abuse. And this is why we have our insane leaders who are abused children who find their way into power. Oftentimes the psychopaths work their way to the top because they're the most ruthless, and they'll get to the top. And then they take control. And we live in a world of such unfathomable pain where people have not wanted to experience their emotions. And ironically, the entire psychotherapeutic community is suppressed emotionally. And they don't want to have to feel their emotions. And then you look at all these different systems. I'm not going to name them by name because I don't want to get people angry at me, but there's many different alternative methods of psychotherapy, from law of attraction to everything else, where people don't want to have to feel the intensity of that wounding. They want to tap themselves or do something, or put their attention somewhere else, or pet the cat, or whatever it is. They don't want to have to feel the depth of what's inside there, because it isn't spirits attacking. It's my mom or my dad who harmed me in some profound way that I'm unwilling to experience, and I must continually do that. Now, the energy healing can cause a temporary relief. It's taking the pot off the stove. It's taking the lid off the pot, rather, and it stops the boiling temporarily. But eventually, that emotional situation comes back, and it expresses itself over and over again. I remember in Japan when I was teaching a workshop, and this man says, I am Bushido. My family is Bushido. We do not feel our emotions. Hundreds of years, these are warriors. And I understood enough of Japan to know what Bushido was. And I thought for a moment, and I said, greatest courage is self-honesty. Because I know warriors value courage, right? And self-honesty is an act of courage. And then he realized that he wasn't being courageous if he didn't want to feel what was there. So he processed the emotions, and then he did the homework that I gave. And he did something completely un-Japanese. He gave me a big hug. And he said, thank you, I have my soul back. Because he had shut down the parts of himself that were wounded, and never to feel them, never have to go there, don't want to experience this, nothing to see here, folks. And he brought it back to life, and he did the forgiveness process, and he got through to the other side, where there's this unfathomable, overwhelming love on the other side of self-forgiveness. People don't even know it exists.
Maybe this is a book we didn't get, but this is so interesting. It's so similar to what we are doing, or what we recommend others to do when they try any healing techniques.
Yes.
We call it a confession. Well, maybe it should be forgiveness, I think, the right name.
Well, it goes, you see, the deal is there are 7 steps to the process. And a lot of people figure out a few of the steps, but they don't have them all in order. And what I did with Self-Created Health was to put them all in order. It took me 30 years, by the way, to put this system together, because I knew that it was missing. And I kept looking for it, but I finally found it. The first step is to know exactly what the emotional cause is. If you don't know the cause, you can't really do the other steps. It's absolutely dependent that you know why you have the condition. The second step is the release. But people doing Gestalt therapy did lots of release, but they still have the pot still on the stove, and it's still, the water is still boiling. Next week, it's still, the pain is still there. The third step of the process is the insight. Yeah, they did it to me, but I'm continuing to do it to myself. Dad beat me up, and I'm still beating myself up. That kind of insight. Once they have that insight, then it takes 5 or 10 minutes of what I'll call deep remorse, where you just sit with it and go, wow, I did this to me. And if you do that well for 5 or 10 minutes, it takes you to a place of what feels like you're unforgivable, unforgivability. And if you go through the unforgivability into a forgiveness process that I created, then it turns into explosive, overwhelming self-love. And it's beyond self-love. It's love of higher self, God, Goddess, all that is, infinite wow. It goes way, way, way beyond all that into the unfathomable places of spirit and being. And then you realize it was a gift that arthritis or Parkinson's or whatever the name of the condition is, was a gift, a horrible gift if you don't know why. And then I've come up with a new name for it. I call them dark miracles. That the miracle is that your body, mind, spiritual intelligence was able to give you a perfect mirror of emotions you didn't want to experience in order to lead you back to that place where you could have that deeper healing. And so the quantum touch is spectacular. The self-created health work is the real gem. But when somebody's in pain, there's nothing better than the quantum touch. And not everybody wants to be a practitioner. I'd say it's kind of rare that people want to spend their life doing sessions. But for 6 or 12 days out of the year, everybody wants to know quantum touch, because it's that invaluable skill that you have when you need it. when the child or the cat or the grandma or whoever it is suffering, that you have that tool, that access to be able to utilize it.
Right. Well, we purchased your books and we read them from cover to cover in chronological order.
Okay, good.
In your book, Quantum Touch, The Power to Heal, you said it took a long time to heal, a long time to align the spines or the...
It can.
But then in your book, the one titled The Secret Nature of Matter,
yeah,
you're getting bucket loads of trials where there was instantaneous alignment.
Sometimes. Yeah, well, the alignment that's instantaneous, usually about a second or two, that is only aligning the hips and the cranial bones. It isn't like straightening out a scoliosis.
I understand. Okay.
And that alignment is more exciting for me because of what it proves than what it does.
Right.
So what it does is it helps a person's gait, and about if a person's suffering from some neck or back pain, a lot of times it'll help them. But it's a permanent alignment. Now, what excites me about it is that it violates the known laws of physics. And it's visible, it's demonstratable, it's teachable, it's highly robust, it's repeatable. It works 99% of the time. And it blows people's minds. So, you know who Rupert Sheldrake is?
No.
He's a brilliant scientist who wrote a famous book, New Science of Life. And because he was a Cambridge scientist and very successful and famous, it got reviewed by Science magazine. And they called it a book truly worthy of burning. And he was so deeply attacked for his discoveries. Well, I told him through emails what I had discovered, that I found a way that I could meditate and cause a spontaneous postural alignment that's visible. Well, Rupert talked about 10 dogmas of science, and he's got a famous TED talk that got banned because it was talking about non-material things. And the TED people believe the only things that are real are things that you can measure. And you cannot measure love, as an example. And so he said that the belief that everything can be, weighed or measured or put into a formula is one of the dogmas of science. Another is that the mind is inside your head. It's confined to your brain. And therefore, there's no such thing as psychic abilities or anything else. Another one is that energy healing isn't real. Another one is that modern medicine has all the answers and none of the alternative stuff ever worked. Those are 4 of the 10 dogmas that he covered. So there I am meeting Rupert, and I measure his wife's hip. Her name is Jill. And Jill's it was her left hip in the front, was about 5 or 6 inches higher than the other. I'd never seen anybody that far off. And I said, this isn't normal. Was there an accident or something? She said, yeah, I had some fractured vertebrae years ago. And Rupert was on one knee measuring her hips, saying, oh my, this is very far off. He got a really clear measurement. And I said something outlandish. I said, Rupert, I only expect this to go back 2/3 of the way in the next 10 seconds. Because when something's so far off, I don't think the body can correct it all the way. So I meditated for about 8 or 10 seconds. And Rupert measured, and it went from about that far off down to about that far off. It was at least 2/3 of the way back. And so Rupert measures, oh, it's much better. And then she saw it work on him, and he saw it work on 2 other people. But it blew his mind so much that when I wrote to him and said, what did you think? He said, the relationship between the 10 dogmas of science and what you showed me appears to be rather obscure. And I don't think this would be of interest to other scientists, because he had been so beat up by the scientific community. He didn't want to take on anything else that would cause more attacks on him. He had had enough. He'd been through enough at this point. But the bottom line is, there's something called the double slit experiment in physics.
Right.
And the double slit experiment opened the door to quantum physics. They send a photon or an electron through a single slit, and it makes like a little bullet hole on the film behind the single slit. But when you have 2 slits, it creates a wave and interference pattern. But if there's an observer, it turns into a single point again. So if you put a camera in the room or a person watching the experiment, it collapses the wave. And this is the great mystery in quantum physics, that no one can begin to understand deeply. So the double slit experiment in itself doesn't have any practical value. Maybe it does. Maybe somebody figured out something to do with it. But essentially, it's just showing us how nature works. Well, my spontaneous postural alignment, SPA, it does have some practical value. Some people, takes their neck or back pain away. But the thing that excites me is that it demonstrates that we're spiritual beings. It demonstrates that our love has impact. It demonstrates the mind is not confined to the brain. And I probably came up with about 35 or 40 different implications of what all this means in my Secret Nature of Matter book. And in the process, I discovered that you could put that consciousness into any physical object: glass, plastic, rubber, paper, pebbles, you name it. All matter is equally able to hold energy and intention. So we created our quantum touch pendant. And this could have been made out of old cigarette butts for all that it mattered, but I wanted to make it attractive. And so people have been adding their energy to the collective. But the cool thing about this, one of the cool things I should say, is that if you hand it to an untrained person and they have the intention of causing alignment, and they touch somebody's ear or their nose or their shoulder or a hair with the intention of causing the alignment, it immediately causes that untwisting of the hips and the cranial bones. And you can only do it once, because once the person has had it done, they're already aligned, and I can test them 10 years later and they're still holding the alignment.
Wow, that's amazing.
Can it still do healing without the intent?
Actually, you wouldn't, because why would you have your hands there if you didn't have any intent?
But you already entangled all of the pendants,
yes.
right?
I entangled them all, yes.
And you and other instructors have already imprinted the healing energy into the pendant.
Yes.
So when someone gets the pendant, does the pendant send the healing energy to them?
Pendant doesn't do anything. It's you with your intention aligning with the information in the pendant that does the work. You see, I could put the pendant around a cat's neck and it doesn't do anything. But if the owner of the cat is joining the cat with the pendant with intention, then it does something. So objects in and of themselves don't really have any obvious intention.
So it's the person who hands the pendant to the one plays a very important role in this.
It's essential. And so we don't even know what this pendant is because it's a new technology. And so I found out in I ran 57, 58 experiments in my Secret Nature of Matter book. And I'd have run hundreds more if I had been in a university and I had access to more people to experiment on. But the bottom line was that I could put multiple intentions into a single object and they didn't get diluted. They're all still there. So people have put their gifts and their special talents or special abilities into the pendant, but we haven't really worked out a good way of receiving them yet. So we're in the earliest stages of understanding this technology. But I'm beginning to think that a few things. One is that the pendant is actually maybe the world's first entangled talisman. So it's a group talisman that everybody can add their energy into. Another thing is that it might be an intention amplifier. And this is new. I haven't written this down yet. But I put the intention in to cause the alignment, and that intention is there. And then if somebody else taps in on that intention, then they can amplify that into themselves. So for instance, I've been playing with this where I'll take the pendant and, tapping your thymus is always good. So it's kind of a ritual. It doesn't really have to be that. I could be touching my nose for all that mattered, or, put it anywhere. But if I tap myself and say, all right, what is the energy and essence of patience? And I'm kind of like letting myself receive that vibration. What's the energy and essence of deeper self-love? What's the energy and essence of courage or wisdom or whatever, or a photographic memory or whatever you want. We don't know what this is yet. But because we now have over 5,000 people who are adding their specialness, that bouquet of love, qualities, into the pendant. And we don't have any easy way of testing this out yet. So that's why I talked to this one fellow a couple of days ago who's working on $1 billion project to create a non-GMO corn in the world. And he's got some other big projects too. And one of the things he does is he won't take on a project unless all the partners agree that some of the money will be utilized toward beneficial things in the world. And one of the things that I want to see, and it's now part of his vision for a beneficial thing in the world, is to see tens of millions of dollars go to study life force energy. Quantum touch, pendants, secret nature of matter. These are all paradigm-changing solutions that the world has not looked at or examined or considered to be possible, and therefore they won't go there. They don't look at them. I was watching a video, and this guy on Joe Rogan's show said, if you can't measure it, it isn't real. Oh, how interesting. That's quite an assumption, that 200 years ago, there's a lot of things they couldn't measure, like electricity or magnetism or brain waves, or thousands of things they couldn't measure, but we know they're real. Just because you don't get that channel on your television doesn't mean that channel doesn't exist. And it's a very limited perspective on reality.
I'm still a little bit hesitant. I really want to get some pendants for my parents, but thinking that all these pendants are entangled, and what if someone imprints some negative energy?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure somebody has. I'm sure people have put tremendous self-pity into the pendants. Now, what do you want from the pendant? Oh, what's the energy of self-pity? I want to experience it. No, you want, I want to feel, I want to hate myself. That's what I want to do today. So what's the intention? The intention is healing.
Okay.
So remember, resonance and entrainment always functions. And it always tends to move to the higher vibration. So what's the intention? The intention is I want healing, I want love, I want well-being. And sure, somebody's put some terrible stuff in the pendants, there's no doubt about it. But what are you extracting? You don't really want the terrible stuff, you want all the good stuff.
So it's like a sea of all different energy put into it. It depends totally on what energy you draw out of it.
Consider this. Conscious people who are buying the pendant, who the first thing they do with their pendant is to try to access their deepest love and gratitude and put it in the pendant. That's the very first thing they do with it. And then they're feeling other people's love and gratitude by connecting to the pendant. And yeah, someday they're wearing it and they're feeling really bad, but they're not focusing their bad feeling into the pendant. They're actually using the pendant to try to feel better. So the pendant is not a harbinger of nasty spirits who want to punish you for your karma for 100 lifetimes ago. No, the thing is like a beacon for love and gratitude and joy. And when people get out of their own way, then they'll discover that we live in the most miraculous universe.
Okay.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. But what if someone intentionally, and because the pendants are all entangled, what if someone intentionally wants to cause trouble?
There may be someone.
Okay, well, let's assume that there is hundreds of them.
Okay, I wasn't going to go that far, but
well, 1 out of every 100 or a couple out of every 100 person is a psychopath or a sociopath. People are messed up. There's a lot of people in the world who are not out for love. Just the way the world works. And only a very tiny fraction of people in the world are dedicated to their own personal growth. It's a very sad thing to realize, but it's not the majority. Okay. It's a very small minority that are completely dedicated to their spiritual growth. But the pendant is only operating off the intent of the person who has the pendant. So if the person really wants to suffer and feel terrible, I'm sure they can do it without the pendant. They can do it independently. But if you focus your awareness on what you want and tap yourself with your pendant, and the tapping is unnecessary. It's just a ritual for accessing that intent.
Okay.
You could do it without the tapping, but it's a nice physical ritual. It doesn't have to be like special places or anything. You just touch yourself with it. Okay, this is what I want to do. And it's a thought amplification device. So my friend who's working on these very large deals is hoping to help my dream come true of having tens of millions of dollars to, hey Enzo, there's a boy. Yeah, he's a big boy. Having tens of millions of dollars to actually do the research and the dissemination so the world can realize that this may be the biggest shift of consciousness in human history. Because the idea that the earth is round, yeah, some people don't even believe it today. The idea that the big shifts of consciousness that have happened over time, realizing that the blood flows through the body, that there's germs. Germ theory was met with tremendous resistance when it came out. Every big change hits a resistance point. But to realize that your love is actually a real force that can change the outer reality, and that we're clearly spiritual beings, and we don't even know our true identity, this would be the biggest shift in human consciousness ever. And this would be very exciting to happen. So I'm very enthusiastic and excited to see the evolution of consciousness take place. But because of the structure of universities, I've written hundreds of letters and I just get ignored by the scientists. Say, wouldn't you like to see something that's outside the box? How would you like to see an undocumented human ability that's robust and I can teach the undergrads and they can immediately pick it up and do it? No, we don't want to see this. Go away. You're bothering me. They don't even answer the emails.
Gosh. Now,
because it's too far outside the box for them.
Yes. I'd say it'd be too far out of the box for most people. But when they open their minds and start thinking,
yeah,
it's not impossible to it's still a quantum leap. Now, in your book, The Secret Nature of Matter, and you describe charging objects with positive intent.
Yes.
Families are bonded, they're linked energetically to each other. So if someone is aligned by an object which has been charged with positive intent, or their brothers and sisters or parents or children, would they also benefit? Is the link?
Everything benefits from positive intent. Everybody benefits from positive intent. So when you think about people who have touched you most deeply, what was their intent? Of course, you're benefited by their positive intent. Think of a teacher who really cared about the subject, who really wanted to see people learn, who made the thing you thought was boring really interesting, because everything is interesting if you dive deeply enough into it. So it's only the burned out, broken people who become teachers who can make something boring, because learning is the most exciting thing anybody can do practically. It's one of the most exciting things in life. And And the students are bored out of their mind because they're trying to memorize bullshit that doesn't have any impact on them. So what's the story? The story is positive intent precedes all action of positivity. You have to have positive intent. Nobody's doing healing without positive intent. It isn't healing at that point. It comes naturally. And you don't question your intent. You don't say, am I walking through the door properly? No, you just have the decision to go through the door. You go through the door. You don't say, am I still intending to go through the door? No, you put your hands on the person to do healing because you wanted to do healing. You don't question yourself along the way. And so, of course, positive intent precedes all healing.
What if you help me get aligned, help my occiput and hips get aligned using your charged coin? Will my parents also get aligned because they are entangled with me?
No, not that entangled. It's not that strong.
Okay.
And I don't work without people's permission either. And if it worked that way that you're describing, I've already done many thousands of people, and I've taught thousands of people who've worked on tens of thousands of more people. But the whole world is not aligned, because if it was, all just through osmosis, everybody'd already be aligned, and they're not. Because it really takes a focused intent to cause this to happen. And it's not a byproduct. It's a focused intent that causes it to work.
Okay. Now we've got a complaint to make with your book, The Secret Nature of Matter. The complaint is this: the last 2 chapters.
Yes, you talk about spirituality and
we those two chapters we couldn't put the book down during the reading of it. The complaint is those 2 chapters should be at the front. They should be the first 2 chapters and not at the back as an epilogue.
You may be right. You know, it gets better and better toward the end. I don't like to end a book with a whimper. I want to end it with a bang.
Well, that was more of a bang. That was when you opened up more in what you truly believe. And you thought, well, to us it was like, well, I'm just going to throw the message out there. If people are willing to accept what I've got to say, good. If not, then it doesn't matter. I'm putting it out anyway. And you kind of put it out quite raw. And it really surprised us. Now we've got a question, a question which really we had difficulty sort of wrapping our minds around, where you discuss the healing of yourself in your childhood.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, did you heal yourself while you were a boy, or did you heal yourself as you are now?
As I am now, yeah.
So, did you effectively change history?
Yes. Can't prove it, but it's true. Well, in my Quantum Touch book, I touched upon this lightly. I thought, nobody gets held enough as a child, unless they're in one of these really primitive cultures that they never put the child down. And
they're not primitive; they're the advanced cultures.
Well, they are more advanced in some ways.
Yes.
But Tom Robbins points out they don't use puns, and so he thinks the best human would be one that has access to the kind of intelligence that we have, but it still has the primitive intelligence too. So you become this really full person where, anyway, that's another story. But I was doing meditation where I thought, what would happen if I meditate and I hold the infant Richard in my arms and I run energy into the past? And I had a bizarre experience. It happened about 3 or 4 seconds after I started running the energy. I felt every vertebra in my spine go brrrr, and they all rippled in a way I've never felt before or after. Went brrrr, from the bottom of my spine to the top of my spine. And I felt like I almost lost consciousness for about 1 second. Like just kind of almost blacked out for a split second. And I thought, am I in the same reality? Has something shifted? You see, if you actually shifted from one reality to another, you wouldn't know it, because I'll tell you an example of that. Have you ever noticed that you're kind of going to sleep and then all of a sudden you're in the middle of a dream? And you know exactly where you are in the dream. The whole storyline has been going on for maybe an hour or two in that dream, and you just walked into that part. You walked into the movie theater and you're right in the middle of that story. Well, if you actually stepped into a different reality, you would be in that reality and you wouldn't remember you came from a different reality. So that's a transcendence where you don't even remember that the other reality even existed. And I suspect I might have done a transcendent experience then, because I kind of blacked out and I wouldn't remember that, I was, in the winter in a cabin before I meditated, and afterwards I was in my house in Santa Cruz. I didn't, it was fascinating. But again, the world is far more mysterious than we understand or know.
Now, that story also brought about a really good question that we sort of came up with. We were quite proud of it, aren't we? Now, if you did this for yourself,
yeah,
can you do this for other people?
Of course.
To really go back into their childhood.
Well, the thing is that you will be blocked at a certain point, because their higher self is only willing to accept changes that are in their best interest. And if a person needs to go through, look, you put yourself into a childhood and you had a father that did this and a mother that did that harmed you exactly the way your growth path needed. And if I was to meditate and take it all away from you, that would be a form of rape, because you went through all the trouble of having that horrendous childhood or difficult childhood, or whatever it was, in order to have these desires and motivations and woundings that could be healed and then be transformed. And to take that away from you, that would be a horrible thing to do. Mm. And so it's not intended for that use. Although it wouldn't hurt to give somebody, somebody who'd been in a war zone and had been traumatized, and to go back and do whatever healing you can do, and then let them do their own process work, because even that trauma in war is part of a growth path, however traumatic and horrendous it might be. Right. It's part of their growth and their choice of what growth looks like.
Do you have any other questions?
I think he has answered all of my questions.
I've got a confession, actually, that I've actually enjoyed this one even more than the last one. I thought the last one would be hard to top, but now we've come from a point of view of we've got a bit of knowledge, a lot of knowledge actually, of what you've done in the past and what you've achieved, and so the questions that we've asked now are more probably appropriate to for the subject matter.
It's all part of the growth process that we're going through. So we just need to do this stuff. And I was going to point out one other thing I want to mention. I came up with a course called it's The Art of Youthing: How to Slow, Stop, and Potentially Reverse Aging. Seems like a useful process. And it's a continuing process where, and this is something everybody can do at home right now. You make one decision every week. And I talk about this process in about 50 different things that people can do, or maybe actually a lot more than that, to make themselves healthier and slow the aging process. But here's something everybody can do immediately. And that is, find one thing you're doing you don't think is really good for you, and make a tiny decision like, okay, I no longer eat this kind of candy. That's it. This is one kind of candy. I'll no longer, for the rest of my life, I'm never going to have any more of that. That's done. I'll do other stuff, maybe not so good, but I'm never going to do that one thing again. And every week you make a decision. I'm either going to start doing something. I'll park my car a little further away and walk a little further, or I'll just, whatever it is, a tiny thing, make a 2% decision every week to either stop doing something or start doing something. And by the end of the year, you're 100% different than you were before. And you continually improve the protocol. You continually improve what you're doing. And it just makes a huge difference in your life.
Well, 100% change in 1 year is not bad, is it?
No. And the next year, another 100%. And the next year, another 100%. And so I'm actually stronger than I've ever been in my life. My waist is 2 inches smaller than it was when I was in high school and college, but I weigh 3 pounds more. I'm 70 now. I have no joint pain. I find myself spontaneously running down the street if I feel like it. I don't feel limited physically. And I'm on no medications whatsoever. And I'm just getting started in terms of making discoveries and realizing what is possible. So, we're all where we are, and we can all keep getting better and better.
It's quite inspirational. Richard Gordon, it's been our pleasure to have you on for a second time. Thank you so much. And please thank on our behalf in a special way for also participating in our program.
Well, thanks for having me. This is great. And you asked really good questions too. I appreciate it very much.
Have a great day.
Hey, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.